The title is Game Theory 17: The Great Reset, and the event that triggers this entire discussion is the ongoing war in the Middle East, now in its second month. The channel's core claim is that the expected U.S. economic collapse stemming from this conflict will not be accidental. It will be engineered. This is the thesis. And immediately we see the foundational move of this entire genre, framing a complex emergent phenomenon as a deliberate, orchestrated plot. He begins by dismissing the mainstream economic explanation, the business cycle, as insufficient. He says it's just gravity, a natural law we're told to accept without understanding the trigger. His counter is that the trigger is always a person, or a cabal, pulling a lever. His method here is instructive. He starts with a legitimate point of economic debate. The precise catalyst of a bubble's pop is indeed a subject of immense study and disagreement. But he doesn't explore that debate. He uses its existence as a wedge to insert his alternative cosmology. No one can explain it properly, he says. So we are going to focus on speculation today. Notice the rhetorical pivot, from an unanswered academic question to a license for wholesale speculative narrative building. He even offers a disclaimer. I've never studied economics. See this as a fun class. This performs a dual function. It disarms criticism by lowering epistemic claims, while simultaneously positioning himself as a brave outsider untainted by orthodox thinking. It's a classic contrarian posture. He then builds his model. First, he explains fractional reserve banking, a bank lending out deposits and creating money through loans, which is standard if simplified economics. But he frames it as a great illusion, a collective hallucination. This is the first step in mystifying the system. Next, he reinterprets the central bank's interest rate. The conventional view is that it influences borrower behavior. He flips it. The rate is a signal to banks on how much liquidity to release. This isn't entirely wrong. It's a partial bank-centric perspective presented as a revelatory secret. The effect is to portray the economy not as a market of individuals, but as a top-down machine operated by a priesthood of financiers. This leads to the grand schematic, Plato's cave. We are the prisoners. The elite are the puppeteers. Money is the fire, the mechanism of the hallucination. The game masters are the BIS, the IMF, Wall Street. The rules-based international order, the UN, the WTO, is the fabricated shadow on the wall, designed to make the game feel fair. Media, education, and culture are the reinforcement mechanisms. When a collapse happens within this staged reality, it's explained away as gravity, a natural law to hide the engineers behind the curtain. The historical narrative that follows is a breathtaking compression of 3 centuries into a conspiratorial through-line. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 becomes a marriage between British military power and Dutch capital, birthing the Bank of England. From this, he extracts 3 eternal principles. Profits are privatized, losses are socialized, wealth is generated through activity, i.e., war, and capital must be transnational. This is then presented as the unbroken template. The entire Enlightenment, Locke, Hume, Bentham, is reinterpreted not as a philosophical movement, but as a propaganda campaign funded by transnational capital to enshrine money as God. This is a profound rereading of intellectual history, reducing complex, multifaceted ideas to mere tools of financial hegemony. Marx, Darwin, and Freud are swept into this same current, all supposedly working to eliminate the divine and reduce humanity to pleasure-seeking, war-fighting, capital-moving animals. The template then jumps to America. The Federal Reserve's creation in 1913 is framed not as a complex response to financial panics, but as the installation of the Bank of England model by City of London agents, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan. The correlation is presented as causality. The Fed is founded, then WWI, the 1929 crash, the Depression and World War II follow. The implication is clear. The system requires war and collapse. It's a cycle engineered by its controllers. We fast forward to 2008. His explanation of the crisis is a mix of accurate factors, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, the subprime market, the yen carry trade, and a core conspiratorial claim. He argues the bubble didn't have to pop. Banks could have perpetually rolled over bad debts because money is just an illusion. It collapsed, he asserts, because specific individuals like John Paulson could make more money by betting on, and therefore, in his telling, actively orchestrating, the collapse. The evidence? Paulson's massive profit. This is post hoc ergo propter hoc reasoning at a grand scale. The consolidation of the banking sector and the shift of home ownership from individuals to institutions after the crash is presented not as a tragic consequence, but as the intended outcome of a wealth transfer scam. He then applies this logic to today's bubbles, private equity and AI. He correctly notes that many AI companies are unprofitable and sustained by complex financing. But his conclusion is that these bubbles don't have to collapse. They collapse when it's profitable for a few individuals to make it collapse. This is the ultimate distillation of his worldview. All economic phenomena are reduced to the profit motives of a shadowy in-group. Systemic risk, market psychology, and institutional failure are erased. Only agency remains. The video ends by linking 2008 to the rise of China, suggesting the Bank of International Settlements directed China to print money to save the global system, setting the stage for the next act. This seamlessly connects his historical model to the present geopolitical tension, implying the current war and the coming Great Reset are simply the latest engineered chapters in this perpetual game. So, what is the actual insight here? The channel is adept at identifying points of genuine systemic fragility and hypocrisy. The socialization of losses, the revolving door between finance and regulation, the often opaque power of central banking networks. These are real critique-worthy features of global capitalism. Where does the reasoning break? It commits the fundamental attribution error on a civilizational scale. It replaces complex, distributed, emergent systems with a single, conscious villain. It turns history into a teleological conspiracy, flattening contingency, ideology, and accident into a preordained plan. The Game Master framework is seductive because it offers total explanatory power and a clear, if hidden, enemy. It turns the terrifying randomness of economic collapse into a predictable, if malicious, drama. This video is less an economic analysis and more a mythological offering. It provides a coherent, emotionally satisfying story for an audience living through the anxiety of war and economic uncertainty. It replaces helplessness with the illusion of understanding, even if that understanding is that we are all helpless puppets. The ultimate prediction is implicit. The collapse is coming, and it will be by design. Whether that's a useful lens or a paralyzing fiction depends on what you need from your history. Is it a cautionary tale about power structures, or a scripture for a secular apocalypse? Okay, count, 32. A new record, I believe. It seems the more grandiose the claim, the more frequent the request for validation.